So the Samsung Galaxy S24 launched almost a year ago already. It's hard to believe. This episode, I want to give you my 2 months later thoughts on the S24 versus Apple's latest iPhone 16. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Let's begin this comparison by talking about the price to value ratio. What do I mean by that? Well, it's basically how much value are you getting for the price with each? We'll start with the Samsung. I do think the Samsung has its strength in giving you more for your money, giving you an extra camera. It also came with AI right out of the box where you had to wait with the 16, but that now has it, so that's kind of a moot point. Also, I do think that the Galaxy S24 is giving you a nicer display with 120 hertz. It's a little bit better with the anti-reflection. Not quite as good as the S24 Ultra, but it has pretty decent properties there. It's a little bit more toned down than before, but it has a nice punch hole. You do have yourself a SIM card tray, and usually you get more storage for less money than the iPhone 16. So generally, I do think the Samsung provides a cheaper entry into the smartphone than the iPhone 16 does. But the iPhone 16 offers good value in that you do have the A18 chipset now, which is the same one you'll find on the iPhone Pros. However, with this phone, there's no 120 hertz, so that's a lot of people just not worth it. But you do have a really powerful chipset, so the value is going to come long term where this phone is still going to perform well way down the line. In addition, you have really good cameras on here, really good video quality, but you sacrifice the 120 hertz display with this one. I feel like the iPhone 16's value also comes on the later part of your ownership when you go to sell it, and the S24 is not worth much unless you trade it to Samsung for another Samsung. And then the iPhone, you could sell this very easily and a pretty high price. So there's value to be had there on the resale. So talking about their designs, their body, and the build, first of all, I'm not sure if you're noticing this, but the Samsung Galaxy S24 has felt definitely a more compact feel. It definitely has just a lighter, it's just a little bit lighter, a little bit thinner. It just feels just more compact in this one, although it's still slightly bigger than the Galaxy S23 that it comes after. It still feels a little more compact than the 16, which feels slightly larger, but it also has sharper corners than the iPhone 16. So to me, it doesn't feel quite as nice in the corner of my hand, but also it definitely feels more compact. So it feels like a really nice size screen in a more manageable size than something like an S24 Plus or an S24 Ultra. And over the past couple of months, comparing this to the iPhone 16, I picked this up and say, this is a powerhouse in my pocket, just like the iPhone 16. Now, the iPhone 16 has a wider kind of feel to it to me, a little bit smoother on the edges, a little bit bigger feeling, even though it's not technically really that much bigger. They basically have a similar size display. As a matter of fact, the S24 has a 0.1 inch larger display, more likely due to it having a smaller cutout and thinner bezels than the iPhone 16 over here. But overall, the iPhone 16 has a much nicer design than a couple of years back, I would say. It definitely looks more refined and polished than something like an iPhone 13. However, both of them do employ IP68 dust and water resistance, so I'm not really concerned about that. I just think these are so close in design. It really just comes down to, do you want Samsung or do you want Apple over here? But when it comes to the S24, I'm looking forward to that smoother rounded edges that are likely coming to the S25. So if you want rounded edges, you'll want to wait out for that. But if not, you can find the S24 at a good deal. It's a nicer, more compact feel, I think, than the iPhone 16. But the iPhone 16 smoother. When it comes to the looks, both of these phones are kind of long in the tooth, as in kind of boring. They have been looking like this for years. I mean, if you look at a iPhone 16 from the front, you wouldn't know if this is a 15, a 14 Pro. You wouldn't know if it's a 16. You wouldn't know any of these differences. If you look at this from the front, you don't know exactly which Samsung that is because all of them look basically the same from the front. So neither of these super interesting anymore. I think they need to switch things up if they want it to look different. But the iPhone definitely does sometimes really stand out because of something like this color right here. So this ultramarine color here definitely lets you know that's the 16. I didn't get one of the more standout colors for the Samsung, but their colors are kind of similar, as well as to some of their previous years, and they don't really change way too much. So it's kind of hard to tell there too. The camera lenses is where Apple really distinguishes this from a previous version. But from a design perspective, if you're just like picking up one of these, you kind of just gonna have to pick which you prefer the looks of, because they're both kind of similar, just have their own little distinct, tiny little differences in their characteristics. I mean, look at where the flashes are in the same location. Cameras are both down on both of them. So it's not really much in it. Now, when it comes to the displays, both of them do have OLED displays, and they both look pretty darn good. Although I do have to mention something about the differences with the displays. We do have more screen to body ratio. Actually, on the Samsung, you have more screen than you have body, so a little bit thinner bezels. Also, the Samsung gets a little bit brighter at 2600 nits peak. In addition, they both have the same 19:9 aspect ratio, but because Samsung went with a slightly larger panel, the iPhone is actually a little bit sharper at 460 ppi, but it's not really noticeable. We do have Gorilla Glass Victus on the Samsung, and we also have Ceramic Shield Glass on the iPhone, which is basically marketing for very tough displays, although neither of these are resistant to cracking. Both of them can if you drop them properly. Although I do have to say both of these do have excellent displays, as you're seeing in this example here. They definitely really shine. One thing I don't like though on the iPhone though is when you pinch in, the dynamic island is definitely more in your face than the punch hole over there on the Samsung. So you'll see that the Samsung kind of gives you a bigger screen experience because of that dynamic island getting in the way there. It just feels like a slightly bigger because of that. So that could make a difference for you depending on, if that matters to you, but it really just depends on how much media consumption you do. Although I would pick neither of these for always watching videos, because I would rather have a larger screen if that's all I'm doing. I would even rather have a foldable, because then I could just pop it open and watch videos. So if that's your main thing, I don't think either of these are the best choice. They're good on the fly for portable use and getting a nice little media session in, but definitely these are some of the smaller options. And then the Samsung does have a little bit more to play around with here in their display settings section. We do have the ability to turn on and off adaptive refresh, which you can also do on the iPhone. You have the Eye Comfort Shield, which is kind of like their version of True Tone. You can also turn on Enhanced Comfort, which really messes with the colors, but sometimes people like that different, tone. And then they added the Vivid mode earlier on, and you'll be able to go to advanced settings, change your RGB settings. If we scroll down here even further, you'll see we have a ton you could play around with. Navigation bar, touch sensitivity, so nice fun display settings. And then, of course, you can take advantage of the display with some split screen action, which you cannot do on the iPhone. And I like how Samsung has the 3 dots right there. You can just go ahead and flip them around. You can also create app pairs on here, which is nice. So this is a really nice panel. The only thing is that it's not as sharp as the iPhone, but you really wouldn't even be able to tell. It's almost indistinguishable or not noticeable. So if you're reading an article, and that's mostly because the screen is not that large anyway, so it's going to have pretty sharp text. Now on the iPhone over here, let's go over here to the iPhone. You do have True Tone, you do have Night Shift, and some of these features are quite good to make the display a little bit more comfortable on the eye, especially the True Tone option. And the iPhone gets pretty bright even on standard brightness right here. And it doesn't like auto dim a lot like it used to. You have bold text, and some of the display settings are actually tucked away in accessibility here. For the iPhone under display and text size, you'll see even more display settings. But you also have things like color filters on the Samsung as well. The iPhone's display settings are not really that big of a deal. You don't really have that many more than you've had from years ago. But the text sharpness is pretty good. Although I feel like the iOS text is a little bit bolder than the Android font, but that's just me. At the end of the day, it still looks pretty good, pretty sharp, but not too different from before. So overall, if I had to pick one for the display, I think from a spec perspective and a feature perspective, I like the Samsung more after these couple of months. But I think the iPhone is better for the general consumer. I just think it's set up nicely. It's calibrated just about perfectly. And it just provides a consumer who doesn't want to mess around with their phone too much with near flawless panel there in terms of like just accuracy and color. Let's talk about software here. Now on the Samsung, I do have to say that I do really prefer how much fun you can have with this phone. Under advanced features, you do have things like labs, which you can enable multi-windows and things of that sort. You also have one-handed gestures, and that's only scratching the surface right here of what you can do. We also have a lot of granular control under device care, which you can manage your memory. You can add, hold on when it loads up, you can add some RAM Plus here under the Samsung here. In addition, you have app protection, which I turned off. I don't know why. You have different performance profiles and more. You also have a maintenance mode. You can go to software updates to update the software, which is obvious. But if we go over here into the home screen, we go to themes. You not only can combine Samsung's Galaxy themes, but you can also combine the ones you'll find in the Play Store. If you want to start really customizing and going to town, you also have all of the launchers that are available for the Google Play Store, which can really go to town on the customization. In addition to that, you can change different home screen icon sizes and stuff like that. So different grid sizes. So this is an area where Samsung still really allows you to pull in a little bit more of your own personalization. If we go over down here, you'll see they have the Google home page, different home screen layouts. You can have app screens or just a home screen layout like the iPhone does. And if we go up here, you have a ton you can play around with here. So the One UI 6 has been pretty fun, pretty nice, and animations are better than ever here. In addition, if you want to play around even more, you can go to the Galaxy Store, go up in here. We have to update this, but you can go up in here and you can get this feature where you can like change the different ways of multitasking. Let's go over here, and you'll see there's just plenty to do inside here. So definitely quite nice. I gotta say, if you're looking for a phone that's just really fun to play around with, and just also is really smooth, fast, and just never gets really that boring, any of the Samsung options, the flagship options, are going to be a good choice for you. And when it comes to other areas of software, I forgot to mention the Galaxy AI experience definitely was way ahead of the time versus this phone over here. And a lot of these features that are on the Samsung are now on the iPhone, but not all of them. You'll have things like Note Assist, Transcript Assist, Browsing Assist, which was one of my favorites to summarize long form articles. In addition to that, Drawing Assist, which you can sketch images and it'll give you an AI generated image, and Health Assist, Chat Assist, Call Assist. So there's a lot of AI based stuff on here that was really, really ahead of the time. So I was glad to report that. And it's still good to use here and fun to use. Although there is rumors that Samsung might charge a subscription for this in the future, which I'm not going to be a fan of. So I hope that doesn't happen, especially when you pay the money you pay to buy these phones. It's kind of annoying. Like I'm not paying for a subscription for that, but that's just me. At the end of the day, the Galaxy AI stuff is also a nice strength for this phone. Now from the iPhone, we have something that Android's been able to do for a long time. Although I do think they do it a little nicer here. You can go ahead and tint the icons. I wish there was a tinted light mode though. I don't always want it dark, but I still want them tinted. So that would be a nice update for iOS 19 if they could bring that later. But you have nice, clean customization here that you never had before. So you could tint those. You could change them to dark, which is nice. Everything darkens out. And something like this, you would have to download a theme for on the Samsung to darken all those icons, or use some of the built-in versions. And then finally, we do have the Apple Intelligence features now, which are still kind of half-baked at this point, but still, and they're still in beta, which is not like they're lying. It says it right there, beta. But you get the new Siri. It would enable. Did I have it turned off? Hold on. That was embarrassing. Let's go over here to, press side button for Siri. I don't know why that was off, but you have the new Siri. Right here, you have the rewrite tools, and you have much more. And much more is coming for this iPhone as well. In addition, the app polish on the iOS software here for the iPhone 16 seems to be a little bit better to me than the Android experience. And also iMessage, FaceTime, you know the drill. This is still going to hold pretty good. But other than that, it's kind of boring to me. Other than that, it just kind of works well. If you had to pick one in software, I would totally pick the iPhone if you want something simple and you want the ecosystem of their products for sure. But the Samsung I'm going to pick if you want to really enjoy the experience of tinkering, not only tinkering, but also having features where you don't have to think about why does my phone not have that feature? Because Samsung is one of those phone makers that has all the features that you could think of. So if you're like, where's the split screen? It's there. If you're like, where's the DeX mode? It's there. you have DeX mode. You can just plug your phone into a computer. And you also have DisplayPort now on the iPhone, but the 16 is not going to give you a whole computer-like experience like the Samsung. So it's really down to that. Simple or more features. That's really what it's down to. And at the end of the day, both of them have really long software support, with Samsung promising 7 years. This one usually goes 5 to 6. So we'll see how it goes in the long term, though. Now, these are a little bit matched when it comes to performance, because the thing is that the iPhone actually has better performance in terms of the chipset. It's a high clock speed, 4.04 gigahertz, 8 gigs of RAM. It should have 12, but it's not a big deal. The Samsung also has 8 gigabytes of RAM. But the iPhone suffers from having 60 hertz. So even though this phone is faster, technically, the Samsung could actually appear faster due to faster animations and 120 hertz. So the overall phone just kind of looks faster when you're using it on the Samsung. And that's just the thing. So even though you have a faster chip, it's not the end of the world. It's basically not even the deciding factor anymore. So it's really up to you. Chipset wise, though, if you want the technically more powerful chip, get the 16. It's more powerful. But if you don't care about that, the Samsung still has an amazingly fast Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, which is basically still super quick. If you put that in a phone now, it's still going to sell as a flagship. Even though the elites are coming out and newer chips are coming out, this is still plenty quick enough. All right, when it comes to camera, let's take a look at them. So we'll take a look at my OnePlus 8 right here edition. If I go ahead and snap the photo, pretty good. We have a 3 times zoom. We can go up to 30x. And just like we have on the Samsung Ultra, we do have all these features. You have Expert RAW, Pro Video, Night, Food, and then you have panoramic mode. And the thing that's nice about this phone here is that while you have all these features, you don't really have to leave the app to go change other settings like you do on the iPhone for certain things. It's all right here in the app, which I really like. In addition, if we go over here, you don't really find a lot of phones that have Pro Video options at this price usually. Usually you're going to pay for the $1,000 plus phones to get all those Pro features. So Samsung is really stuffing it in, even on their smaller S24. So I really like the camera setup. In addition, the front-facing camera is also going to be a little bit sharper, a little bit, I wouldn't say so much sharper, but softer. I tend to prefer the skin tones on these Samsung photos from the selfie. Now the iPhone over here, and the video is pretty good as well. You can do 8K video on that phone. Now the iPhone has a really nice photo as well. It tends to prefer to lean a little bit warmer, I feel like. And I do like the video more. It just has a more realistic look to it. So if I was doing video recording mostly, if that's what you're doing, I'd pick up the iPhone for this one. Cinematic mode, photo modes. And you have spatial video, which I don't think is going to be useful for a lot of people right now. Then you have their own video action mode over here. So that's pretty cool. But Samsung also has that as well. They actually had it first with a super steady mode right there. So definitely quite nice. And again, higher video output is possible on the Samsung. But again, it's one of those things where it's like you get everything, but you don't get always the best quality, but still very good quality. And then the iPhone, you're getting not tons of features, but one of the best video cameras, even though it's on the base model. If I go over here to settings, though, I scroll down into, let me go down to the camera section for you. If I go over here, so we got to go into the camera settings still to enable some of the more intense camera features, which would be things like, PAL formats, enhanced stabilization, action mode, low light. And it's all here. And this is why I'm saying this is pro enough for most people. But you have to go dig around in here to play around with stuff. And sometimes I simply just forget. So I definitely, and you have photographic styles as well. That's something unique to the iPhone. But I do have to say that I don't like always digging around in those camera settings. I wish Apple would just put a button or the buttons in the camera settings themselves, so I don't ever have to leave the camera to go there. I also want to mention that I do think that Apple has a little bit better support for third-party cameras. Let's go to like the Final Cut camera. So I think people develop better camera apps for the iPhone. So if you want to use a third-party option, I feel like they have a few more that are just a little bit more professional. If we go over here to third-party camera apps, let's go to camera, and you'll see, let's go over here. There's quite a few, but they're just not quite as nice to me as the options that are available for the iPhone. Now, when it comes to storage, Samsung usually offers a better deal on storage, and they actually make a lot of storage things like SSDs and memory cards and stuff like that. So it makes sense why. That's something that they mastered already. But the iPhone over here, definitely you're going to pay more for more storage, which is kind of evident across everything they do. iPads, Macs, whatever. I got this 256 Samsung for cheaper than this 128 iPhone 16. So Samsung is getting the win here in the storage department. Although we do have NVMe fast storage on here, so the iPhone's speed is really good, especially if you're transferring, but I don't know how many people are. We do have UFS 3.1 on the cable though, so the transfer from a cable is faster on the Samsung versus this old school 2.0 port over here. So Samsung wins there. We also have UFS 4.0 on the Samsung as well. So, this is definitely for mine, 256 gig. 128 is going to give you that UFS 3.1. But the Samsung can also go to 12 gigabytes of RAM, especially if you go with one of the higher gig options. This phone over here, just better value for storage on the S24. So I'm going to pick this one and recommend this one if you guys do want to have more storage for less money. But the iPhone, you're definitely going to pay more. So Samsung wins. Once again, just like some of the other settings that Samsung has a lot of nice settings for, the battery section is nice as well. Some battery protection settings, some background usage limits. You also have a few things you can do here, like tweak the charging on the iPhone over here. But generally, I feel like the iPhone has a little bit better standby time, but the difference in the battery life is not substantial. This is a 3561. This is a 4000 milliamp, but they do use different software, so they tend to have different battery life. Both of them tend to get through most of the day, but I find the iPhone will last me about 45 minutes longer in my experience. So I would pick the iPhone for pure length of lasting in the battery per day. But I would pick the Samsung if you want faster charging, probably a little bit more battery settings to play around with and stuff of that sort. But if you throw this down on 60 hertz on the Samsung, it's pretty much a wash. It's pretty equal, actually. So there's not much to speak of in there either. Battery-wise, you're not going to lose either way. Both of these can make it a full day of use. So a couple months later, the Samsung is only slightly less loud than the iPhone 16 in the audio department, but it's so slight, it's almost no difference. So they're both really good in the speaker department. Connectivity wise, though, the Samsung does have a pretty good set. We do have 5.3 Bluetooth. We do have Wi-Fi 6E. We also do have Wi-Fi 7 on the iPhone 16. So connectivity is a little bit better over here. Improved modems actually makes the iPhone this year give me better reception in some weird places than the Samsung, which is really strange to say, but it's true. That's true for me anyway. 5.3, but if you're in a major city, that's probably not going to matter too much. Emergency SOS and texting via satellite is something that the iPhone has a real strong suit in over the Samsung, although this does have it has a couple emergency features as well, so it's not out of the ballpark there either. And the Samsung also does have circle to search with the AI features, whereas this one doesn't. It has its own Apple Intelligence features as well, though. So when I really think about it, this is a really, really close comparison, but I think the Samsung Galaxy S24 pushes ahead of the iPhone 16 this year for me. While the iPhone 16 still has the faster chip, it doesn't really matter. The Samsung has an 8 Gen 3. It's super powerful. It's more compact, less screen to body. It has like a better, thinner bezels, less distraction with a punch hole, an extra camera, more camera features, 8K video recording, AI as well, and 120 hertz display, and comes in at a cheaper price. So I think the S24 is a better pick than the iPhone 16 after having this for 2 months. It's a better deal. It's better for the money. However, that's only if you're going to use the heck out of your phone. If you plan to just have a simple phone with iMessage and FaceTime, the iPhone is a better pick. And if you're in this ecosystem, it's still the better pick. And lastly, if you plan to sell it for money later to get your money back, and you don't know if you're going to stay with Samsung, the iPhone's a better pick because you'll definitely be able to resell this for more and probably quicker and easier than the Samsung. So that's going to wrap it up here for me between these two. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns on both of these. You're still trying to decide. Leave them down below in the comments because a lot of people will respond with their experiences. I'll try to respond with mine as well. And I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well and peace.